Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third installment A Second Brain. I'm really excited for this particular stream. So this stream is one when we start to explore what we've learnt so far and start to make it work for us. Before I start, it's another absolutely sweltering day here just outside London. So I'll do my best not to turn too red and kind of keep it as fun as we can. So I expect this to run between 45 minutes and 60 minutes. And what we're going to really be exploring is taking the second brain and now starting to make that second brain work for us. So if we just a little bit of a recap of where we are so far. Oh, I think I might have just lost the sound. So just a summary. So last week, what we done was we worked with the AI to build the second brain, but now we're going to work to do that in a more scalable way and in a more consistent way. And the way we're going to use that is we're going to use Claude Cowork today, but it doesn't matter if it's Cowork that you use or if it's ChatGPT or if it's Gemini or Copilot. It doesn't really matter what one you're going to be using. So the plan today is that we're going to walk through 6 different things. First, we're going to look through what is a skill. So we're going to be exploring this idea of a skill, this reusable process that we can do again and again. And the skills that we're going to be looking at is the skill to build a second brain and the skill to update a second brain. Then we're actually going to look through this thing called the skill standard. So basically what skill is a reusable process, and we're going to look at how that's been adopted across different AI platforms. After that, we're going to just remember ourselves of our second brain, the one that we built in the last stream, how it works, and then use that to go and ask a few simple questions just so that we're ready. And then we're going to get into the meat and get into the bones of this particular stream. We're going to then explore building the second brain via one of the skills. And all these skills will be ready for you after the stream that you can go and access in your own time. After that, we're going to look at updating the skill. So we're going to look at taking a skill, so that could be, updating the brain. So that could be given a PowerPoint deck, that could be given an email, that could give it a transcript. Next to what we're going to look at is actually updating that skill. And then what we're going to do is then we're going to look at building it into an end-to-end workflow. So let's go and start at step number 1. So really, what is this idea of an AI skill? And as I said, the skills are going to be what we're going to be using to build our second brains in a repeatable way. It's going to be used to build and update our second brains in a second way. But after you learn a skill, you can do it for really whatever you want the AI to do in a repeatable way. So that's the way that I really want you to think about it. A skill is basically a repeatable process that the AI uses it. And some people like thinking of it as a recipe. So if you're building, let's say you're creating your favorite pizza, as a quick aside, I'm just a way to start my own little pizza business. So a little bit of a plug for that. But let's say we've got a great recipe for a pizza. So basically, like what that recipe is, so we can build it again and again and again. So we get the dough consistent, so we get the sauce consistent, so we get the mozzarella consistent. So basically, this idea of this repeatable skill is a repeatable way of doing things again and again and again. So when we think about our second brains, is how do we build them consistently? And the really important thing is after you build the skill, you can do the first pass in a repeatable way. But then thinking about like humans in the loop and how that we work, it means that we have more time to work with it in a consistent way. So the way that I typically work with AI skills is the following. So basically, I look at a job or a task that I want to do. So that could be a marketing job, a sales job, a product job, a training job. I then write it down in kind of common English. So that would be the skill standard. I then tell the AI to go and run that particular skill. And then after it builds a skill, then I get it to go and get the output for me. So let's put that into context of something that I do most days. So when I was building this YouTube stream today and I was building my thumbnails for the YouTube stream, I have got a skill called building a thumbnail. So in that, I describe what a great thumbnail looks like. So I've got basically what the thumbnail vision looks like, what the different images look like, where to go and call to get the images built, all the different images. And then I basically describe to the AI, please use the YouTube thumbnail skill and go and build me that thing that I can go and use for my YouTube stream. It will go and build the thumbnail for me. And then after that, I can then go and sit and then refine that again and again and again. So the skills are probably one of the most important things to think about in this AI kind of point of view. So you pick a repeated process, you write it down, and this is a big secret sauce from last week. It's just a markdown file, and we're going to look at that in a little minute. You give that skill to the AI, so it doesn't matter if it's your Gemini, your ChatGPT, your Claude, your co-work. And then basically you say, can you use this recipe to go and solve a particular problem for me? So let's just get into that in a little bit more detail. So from last week, what I'm just bringing back up is my Obsidian once again. And what we're going to walk through is just a little bit more detail about these skills and kind of some of the things that I use them for each day. So as I said before, these skills are all around building repeatable processes. So you pick the job that you want to do, you write the skills.md, so look at that bit there, that key bit there, .md. You hand it to your AI assistant, and we're going to be doing that very soon when we're building our second brains, and then we refine our outputs. So some of the things that like I use skills for in a day-to-day basis. So one of the things that I like to do is like do weekly content. And the thing is really different from a lot of the AI slop you kind of see out there. Everything's being driven through my second brain. So when I'm building my weekly content from today, it's coming from my second brain. It's coming from the transcripts from my YouTube streams and stuff like that. I use it to build campaigns and for retros that we would do in our team and look at analytics. Me and the social media marketer that I work with, who I think is on the stream today, Anna, we use it to build our social media calendars. So it's go and think about what we're going to do each day. We go and look for competition in the market. So, for example, one of the people I really strive to be is this chap called Cole Meaden, who's one of my favorite YouTubers, who is kind of one of the kind of real thought leaders on second brains and stuff like that. Definitely give him a shout. So I go to use a skill to go and look at what he's doing to see like some of the things he could influence in my particular streams. I do a lot of sales work, so I do it to help me build some of my account plans. So I've got a skill saying what a good account plan looks like, where my different data streams are to go and build it. The team uses it to help them build their pipeline to go and see what deals they've got on. And like basically you can build skills for whatever that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So that could be if you're working in product, to take lots of customer feedback and give you a digest of the tickets. I'm a software engineer. One of the things I really hate doing is documentation. So after the code's written, I can go and get that to get my release notes and that type of stuff. One of the things that I found most useful for using skills is building tasks and project management plans. So if you've got Monday.com, Jira, GitHub issues, Microsoft Planner, whatever you're using for managing tickets, you can sit and have a skill to say what a good ticket or task looks like, and then you can build and do it. Amazing some of the things that you can build for skills in the software engineering department. You can build it for doing security sweeps. You can build skills for doing unit testing. And then one of the things that I was working with, so our CFO, who would say that he's not that technical, I helped him set up a whole bunch of different skills to help him look through a whole bunch of financial information. So these skills are really simple processes that you describe in Markdown for the AI to do something again and again and again. Before I move on there, any questions on skills or anything about this skills thing before we go into how they are how they work and we get into actually using some of these skills in practice? Cool. So here's like the big secret, or not such a secret. All the skills are, just like we spoke about last week, are these very simple Markdown documents. So in the Markdown documents, it's going to say what the name of the skill is. So this would be called, the skill's name is the second brain builder. It's going to say when it runs and how to run it. It's going to go through the actual steps that we need to go and build the second brain. And then maybe we put in some rules for things it can and can't do. So let's just like talk about this in common English. So we're building our second brain. So in our second brain, we want a mechanism to get information into it. So maybe we want to get our PowerPoints into it, our docx's into it, all our different information into it. So let's say we're calling that our inbox. So inside our skill, we're going to call it second brain, and we're going to say step number 1, create us an inbox. Then after that, we're going to say the other folders that we're always going to have in our second brain. So let's say for our second brains, we're going to have a strategy folder, or we're going to have a processes folder, or a brands folder. Basically, what we're going to then do is describe in that skills.md is all of the steps that we need to go through to build that second brain. And then let's say we've got some rules. Let's say, for example, we never want to process videos into our second brain because it just takes too much time, too much money in that. So we could put a rule saying never process MP4s or video formats into it. Let's say we've got a rule that there's a certain customer that says we could never process their data into our second brain. So let's say we've got Acme Corp, and they say that they can never do it. So basically what we can then do is we can put some rules into the skills format to make sure that never happens. So if we just get back to our labs, and really if you just think when you're thinking about the skill, it's just simple Markdown that we spoke about before. So we're going to have a name, a description, the instructions, and really like what is going to be the step-by-step process that it goes down to solve it problems. So as I said, some of the key things that we're going to have: a trigger, so what executes that skill, what it needs to do, any rules that it needs to do or what it doesn't need to do, and the steps it needs to go through. So here's an example. So if you just remember from last week, an example skill of doing some weekly content roundup. So if you remember from last week, this is metadata, and this is how we put metadata into a Markdown document. So we're calling this skill, and the name of this skill is weekly content roundup. The description of the skill is that it writes the Monday content into a particular blog folder. So down here we say, how do we execute this skill? So basically what it says is when someone wants to go and ask for content roundup, it's going to execute this skill. What it needs to know, basically needs to know about what that folder is, the blog folder. And then the guardrails or the rules, we're saying what it can and can't do. And it doesn't really matter what way that you put these skills together. There's lots of different thought leaders and there's different examples. But really just think of it as that you're writing a recipe. And that AI is going to use that recipe to go and solve a particular problem. And it really is that simple. And what we're going to do now is that we're going to just refresh ourselves on the second brain and what the second brain that we built before was. Then we're going to go and build a second brain using a skill. And we're going to talk through that skill. Then we're going to update the second brain with some information. And then we're going to do a little bit of a roundup. So just as a reminder of the second brain and the second brain concept. So basically what you have got is this living organism that's taking all your digital life, you're putting into a structured way so you can ask questions against it. So basically after you've got the second brain, and as I said before, we built a stream for our second brain so that we can ask questions about it, and you have got access to that. So literally how I built this stream today and everything that you're seeing uses that exact methodology. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and load our second brain that you guys have all got access to, and don't worry about it if you've not got access to it at the moment. We'll talk about where that is towards the end of the stream. We're going to load it into our language model of choice, and we're going to ask it some questions. And then after we just get into the habit of what the second brain and what the second brain is, then what we're going to do is build our own one. So just to kind of just do a quick summary before we jump into Claude and into co-work. So if we just remember, we've got our second brain, we have got the different files and folders. So we've got the inbox, we've got the files and folders where it's going to ask questions. We've got index.md, which is basically like the glossary for all the information that goes into our second brain. And basically, the types of questions for the second brain that we could ask would be, so I built the one, as I said, for this YouTube stream. So who's the series for? So the series for is people that want to build content, typically in L&D, marketing or sales. What are we covering in the 4 weeks on it? So week 1, we're doing the second brain introduction. Last week was Markdown. This week is an introduction to co-work and building second brains. And next week is a roundup and doing it a little bit more at scale. How does the free series pay for itself? So as I said, this is part of a larger program that we're selling to businesses. So this is kind of like what I would call a lead magnet. What do you measure and to know this is working, and why is it delivered? So I won't go through each one of these questions, but basically we can then take this question and then ask it against our second brain. So let's just go back into so if we can remember from last week, we have got, this is Claude. So this is the LLM that I am using. So basically inside Claude, I have loaded in my second brain. So basically I've got my second brain loaded in here. And all I'm going to then do is going to ask a question against the second brain. So remember what the second brain is. In fact, if we'll just go and have a quick look at it just to remind ourselves of what's in our second brain. So we've got our second brain here. So we've got our inbox. So this is where we put all our PowerPoints and our different information. Then we've got all our different files for a second brain. So we've got our go-to-market strategy, and remember that autonomy of each file is that we've got our metadata up here. Then we've got our simple markdown, and then we've got our links that link us to different pages, and then finally we've got our index.html. So all that I have done is I've taken that second brain and I've uploaded it into Claude. You could do the same if you've got if you've got a Copilot subscription with Microsoft, if you have got a ChatGPT subscription, if you've got a Gemini subscription, really any of the tools that you're using, you can use this mechanism. So all I have done is uploaded into Claude the second brain. So if we just ask it that question, who's the series for? Cool. So just a bit of a login just there. So the audience, so it's defined in that folder there, the zero tool folder. And it says, let me read the ICP. So who's the ICP, the ideal customer persona for it. So who's the series for? So it's getting that information for us from our second brain. So at the moment, it's just working through. And that's why I always ask these questions before the stream, just in case anything happens live in a demo. So at the moment it's working through something, but it doesn't matter if it doesn't, because I've got examples of ones I asked before the stream. Claude has been going on and in and out today, but let's have a quick look. So it's looking through the second brain on our computer. And we'll give it one more minute, and it doesn't seem to be working. So we'll just go back to an example from before. So who's this series for? So I asked it before the stream. So basically it speaks about the ideal people to come onto this are people that want to generate content in L&D space, the market space, and people who want to generate content. So the core part about the second brain and about these different skills, it's just the information in this really simple format, in this markdown format, that we can use to solve particular problems. So that's all a little bit of a recap, but now what I really want to do is talk about building a second brain. So basically with building a second brain, what we need to concentrate on is building a skill that describes what a second brain should look like. So here I've got an example second brain. So I've got a second brain that I want a folder called inbox. And inside that inbox, I'm going to put all my kind of raw data. I'm going to put the data that I've got for, let's say, my PowerPoint decks, my documents, everything that I am actually working through. And then I've got all my second brain information. So I'm going to have, in this one, I'm going to have questions, topics, and projects. And there's not, when we're building these second brains, there's not one size fits all. I've got different sets. So the way that we work when we're doing second brains for other organizations, we build them at the organization layer. So let's say we've got a company. So I work for MediaZoo. So we've got MediaZoo second brain. MediaZoo's got two child companies. We've got Uncertainty Experts and we've got finervision. So first of all, we'll build organizational second brains that are going to have different files and folder structures. After that, we've got our departmental second brains. So we've got second brains for sales, we've got second brains for marketing, we've got second brains for product. Then we've got project second brains. So let's say we've got a project for Acme Corp. So we use that then to go and build that for the particular customer. And then finally, what we've got is individual or personal second brains. And that's kind of what we're going through today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a second brain. I'm going to build a second brain for using AI knowledge. So basically what I want to do is all the different AI YouTube that I want to build a second brain that's got information on the topics and all the different bits from the different YouTube streams that I kind of watch. And I want to have the second brain to catalog all of that. But before I do, any questions so far on anything that we have covered? Just wait for 1 second to see if there's any questions. Cool. So now we're going to get to it. So what we're going to do is that we're going to build a skill, and we're going to build the skill in Markdown. We're going to describe what our second brain should look like. We're going to load that skill into our AI platform, and then we're going to ask the AI to build a second brain using that skill. So this is really probably the core part of the entire 4-week program and probably the most important part. So just to go through that one more time. So what we're going to do is that we're going to build a simple skill in Markdown that is going to describe a second brain and how to build a second brain. We're then going to load that into our LLM platform of choice. In this particular one, it's going to be Claude Cowork. And then we're going to ask it to build a specific second brain for us based upon the information that we want, or the second brain that we want. So if I just go back to our labs. So I just first of all want to talk about the actual second brain that we are wanting to build. So we can build lots of different types of second brains. A personal second brain might look something like this. So it might have the index.md that we spoke about before, the inbox. So all second brains that I typically work with have that. But then for a personal second brain, we might have the questions that we're trying to work out, the topics that we're building it for, the projects that we are working with. If we're building a sales second brain, that might, for a company, it might look different. So it's still going to have the index and the inbox, but then inside the second brain, it might have the information about the accounts, the deals we're working, the playbooks, the meetings. Let's say that we're building a marketing second brain. Well, that might have information about our campaigns, the content, our ICPs and our audience, the performance that we want to get from it. Let's say that we're building a product. We might have the information about the product discovery, the features of the product, the decisions that we've made, the release cycle. So you can build the second brain for what works for you. Let's say we're building a learning program. So let's say we've got the sources, the topics, the practice, and then let's say over time we want to say who the learner is, what the knowledge, skills, behaviors are. We can build it all on this particular one. So I'm just going to talk through then the example skill that I've built for you to build a second brain. Now, this is the most simple one that we've got in the world, but it's just common English. So if we just go through it at the moment and have a quick look what we've got, is here it is at the moment. So we've got this name of the skill. It's called the second brain builder. We've got this description, and why this description is really important is that AI uses this to work out what skill it should choose. So if you say, go and build me a second brain, the AI is going to go and look through that description. Then I speak about what the skill is for. So turn a folder of messy notes into your brain. I speak about the trigger. So like, how do we execute this skill? So when someone says to build a second brain, this is the one to go and use. The AI then comes and asks me some questions. So I say, what questions? So this is the recipe. What should the second brain be about? What subjects matter? What do you want me to produce? Is there any public or sensitive data in the second brain? And which folders hold sources? So basically in my recipe for the second brain, I'm describing it to the AI actually how to go and do that. Then all the guardrails are things I want it to do and things I don't want it to do. So I tell it the folders that I want it to work within. I say things that I never wanted to change. I tell it that it's not allowed deleting stuff. So if you look through Twitter or Reddit, there is a whole bunch of skills that have maybe done deletions on people's computer because they've not been explicit in guardrails. I've said that it can't write anything till I give a formal approved step. And basically what I'm kind of given is the step-by-step instructions for what makes this skill successful. And as I said, when you're working through these skills, like you can build the way that you want to do recipes. So in MediaZoo, we've got a specific way for the skills that we build them. Some of them are a lot more complex than this. Some of the skills run scripts and code for the back end. So for example, our skills that build PowerPoint presentations, they have code to make them consistent. But at the most basic, thing of this skill, all it is basically a recipe that describes what it needs to do. So the name of it, how it's executed, the trigger, what it needs to work from, what it needs to not do, what I can give it, and what the output should look like. So this is all this really basic skill is doing. So let's actually go and take the skill. So we've got the skill, and the skill is available after it. We're going to go and load it into our language model. And then after it's loaded into our language model, what then we're going to do is we're going to run it and ask it to build a second brain. And the second brain we're going to be specifically building is one to manage our research that we've got in AI. So it's going to look something a little bit like this, a little bit of Blue Peter. If you're not old enough to be in the stream and you don't know what Blue Peter was, it was a kids program where they built stuff. So they always like Blue Peter and showed you before it had been built. So we've got the second brain here. So we've got the second brain that's got an inbox. Inside the inbox, it's got 5 bits of content from YouTube streams that I really like. So we've got one from Andrew NG. If you don't know who he is, he's got a program called Deep Learning, which is some of the best free learning on the internet. We've got some things from other thought leaders, with the main one being one of my favorites, Andrew Karpathy, who is one of the kind of core ones around this idea of second brains and skills. So Andrew Karpathy was, I think, in the founding team at ChatGPT, OpenAI, Then he went into Tesla and was one of the founding teams behind Tesla Self-Drive. Then he was one of the most prolific internet YouTubers on teaching people how to build an LLM from scratch. And then most recently, he's joined Anthropic. So a really interesting dude. So like some of all his information here is on that. And basically what I want to then convert that to is questions that I've got about the different things in my second brain, the key topics that I want to go and explore. So how an LLM works, AI agents, all these different things on the different right-hand side. So basically taking that information from them YouTube streams and putting them into knowledge that I can go and look. So if I go, for example, how the LLM works, it's created and made that note. So it's created our front matter. So it said, what type is it? Where's the source came from? And then it talks about how the LLM works. So big pile of numbers, puts it into a small program, uses these tokens, uses a transformer model, and then you kind of go through it a little bit further, and it talks about that in a little bit more detail. So let's go through how I done this in. I'm going to show you how I done it in Claude. Very similar how it works in ChatGPT, in Copilot Studio, and in Gemini. So all I need to do is take the skill that we just spoke about there, so our brain builder skill, and then we upload it to our LLM so it knows what good looks like. So I'm just going to go to that one now. So I'm on my LLM, and I'm going to go into settings here, and then go into skills, and basically I'm just going to add that skill. So you can see that I added this updater and builder skill. So if I click on the builder skill, it's exactly what you saw before. So all it is the markdown that describes what the second brain is. So the name is the second brain builder. Then basically the trigger, so how is it executed? So when someone asks for a second brain, and exactly what we just said there before is the steps that it's going to go through to build this second brain. So if we just go and have a look and work through, so it wasn't quite working before. So I've already kind of run this today. So the question that I asked was, can you build me a sample second brain based on a YouTube video, YouTube videos I find on AI? Then it came back and asked me a whole bunch of questions, including what does the second brain want to focus on? And it came down and asked me some more questions about who are the thought leaders that I want to go and get it to prioritize. So it said Andrew Karpathy, it said Andrew NG. So that was going to go and do some research and put that in initial research into the second brain. Then it's used that skill then to say, I'm proposing this is the initial structure of the second brain. So inside I'm going to have the index, which is going to be like the glossary. I'm going to have the inbox, which is going to be all the raw data from the transcripts. And then I'm going to convert that into the different parts of the second brain, the questions, the topics, the actions. So all of that came from that skills.md when we described what the second brain should look like. And then really importantly here, if you remember when we went through the second brain builder skill, we had a guardrail saying before we build anything, it always has to have this approval step. So that is exactly where that's coming from. So before it goes and builds that second brain out, it comes to me and asks for approval. So basically that's how simple it was for me to build that second brain. I built the skill and gave it to my LM in ChatGPT, in Copilot, in Gemini. It's all very similar. Then after that, what I then done was I used that skill to go and build the second brain. And ultimately what I got out the back end was this. So how did I build this? So how did I build this inbox mechanism with all that research information, the index, and all the things that we spoke about last week? That was all built automatically by the LLM. So if we just go back to the index now, so for the index is like the glossary of all the information that we've got. So you can see now it's got how LLMs work in it, using LLMs in practice, all that information, and some additional information that we're going to explore in the next thing. So that really is how simple building one of those second brains are. So first of all, you build the reusable skill. You describe what the skill is and how it works. Then after that, you load it into your language model of choice, and then you ask it to go and build the second brain, or the thing that you want to go and build. Just stop there very quickly to see if there is any questions before we go into how do we actually update and add things to our second brain. Cool, so I'm going to sound like a bit like a broken record now, and it's where it starts to get compounding and a little bit simpler. So basically, after I have got my second brain builder skill, another skill I built was one called the second brain updater skill. And that basically says is when I add something to this special folder called inbox, essentially what I want it to go and then do is look for that files and folders in inbox and process that into that second brain. So this is where we can have and put our PowerPoint information, our PDF information, our transcript information. So inbox is the stuff that's not been processed yet. And then basically what the LLM is going to do, based upon the skill that you have and the rules within the skill, it's going to process that into different files and folders. So basically what I done was I took my transcript from the last session on building Markdown, and then I built a skill to go and process that particular document. So if we just go through that really quickly. So the things that we might want to process, meeting transcripts, voice memos, emails that we're working, slide decks, PDFs, Slack messages, YouTube transcripts, web clippings, including diagrams, photos, CRM exports. Essentially, this is where we're putting all our raw data to go and get processed. And what then I have written is another simple skill. So basically what this skill does this time, and the difference with this skill, is essentially what it does is used for updating. So basically what this does, it takes information from the inbox and then it processes that into our second brain. So when a new file lands in our inbox, I want you to update the second brain. What I need to use is to use the second brain folder that you are in, and then the guardrails, what it needs to go through. So only things when it's dropped into that thing, it asks for approver for an update. And then what does it do? It reads the information, it makes a change report. So what I do with my second brain, I always, when it makes a change, I get it to write that change so I know the things that it's done. It asks me to approve the update, and then I've got an extra couple of rules. But once again, just like from it, this is like so kind of simple. We're just describing the recipe. So the recipe that we're trying to do this time is when we're wanting to add things in a really consistent way into our second brains. So we speak about how we execute it, what I need the AI to do, what the AI shouldn't do, and what it needs from me, and the steps that it needs to go through to solve that particular problem. So all I done was I added in a transcript. So I added in this transcript here. So literally this is the entire transcript, or sorry, that is the process transcript that I've got from my original second brain. So I went through an extra stage so I didn't have to go through like all of the kind of minute by minute detail. I don't, but this is basically the things that we covered last week. So why second brain, what a markdown is, what is Obsidian. Hopefully if you're on the stream last week, this is familiar, different headings, bullets, that type of stuff. And then basically that then got processed into our second brain. So organizing second brains, markdowns in Obsidian. So that's exactly what that skill done. That skill essentially described to the LLM what the update process looked like. It then took that information and then put it into the second brain. So if we just go back to our LLM of choice, so my one's Claude, and we go and then look at the skills that we've updated again. So if we go into our skills, and then basically here you can see we've got this second brain updater skill. And in the updater skill is exactly what we just explored then. So we're saying exactly what it does. Look in inbox, what it needs, what I need from him, the guardrail, so it needs to say approve update before I run it. And basically what I then done was inside this same thing here. So after it had built the folder structure for me, so it's built the second brain folder structure for me, I've approved the build. And then what you can see here, you can say, can you add the following key things transcript from my YouTube video to the second brain? So here you can see this is the absolute raw transcript. So I basically say, can you add this to my second brain via my inbox mechanism? So you see that's that very long transcript. It processed that into the inbox. And then ultimately at the end of it, after all these things here, it basically asked me to approve it for update. And then it said the new pages it was building for me. So in that update, I was building a new page in topics called Markdown and Obsidian. It was building the front matter and indexing. It was building the topics for organizing the second brain. So just to kind of go through that process again, without the technical implementation, essentially what we done was we built a skill. The skill was called the second brain updater. When we put something into that inbox, essentially it's processed into the right place. It's asked for that approval to go and add. And after we approve it, then it's added to our second brain. So that's how we can do it in a repeatable way. And after you've got the information into your second brain, that's when you can start to build other skills on top of it. Marketing skills, sales skills, product skills, learning skills, everything that I just took us through. So last but not least, just going to kind of summarize how this works in a looping mechanism and how you might use this in a day-to-day mechanism. So after you are working on, so let me take a step back. So when you're doing your day-to-day learning, and let's say you watched a YouTube video, you've read a PowerPoint document, you've read a Word document, you have had a transcript from a really great meeting. Essentially, you've got this raw and unprocessed data. Basically, you put that into the inbox, and then either you would build or update the second brain. So let's say we're updating the second brain from a transcript. The AI is then going to build that into the second brain and ask for you to approve that. That second brain is then going to grow, that compounding thing that I spoke about before, that organic thing that I spoke about before, is going to go and do that for you. And then what is going to be, this is the most important thing, is the more that you add to the second brain, the better the information that you're going to get out of it. So the more that you make the information in there, you refine it, you go through the updater, you add new information to it, it's kind of growing that with you. And that's where it's very different when you're just working with static data. You maybe build a PowerPoint presentation once, but when you're kind of building it via a second brain mechanism, you can build it repeatable way again and again and again. So let's just quickly go through what we've been through today, talk about what we're going to do in the final stream, and then that'll be it for this particular one. So what we started off with today was talking about building our second brain. First of all, we talked about the importance of AI skills. So AI skills are this really simple markdown documents that we can do. We talked about this mechanism of building recipes. So basically going from a process that we do manually to building that into a repeatable skill. We said we'd written it into Markdown, into the special folder and file called skills.md. And basically after we've written that skills.md, we hand that over to our LLM choice. We use Claude today to go and build that for it. And then basically what Claude does, or ChatGPT does, it builds that different outputs to go and solve particular problems. After that, what we spoke about was skills in a little bit more detail. So we spoke about skills.md, we went through the skill, we spoke about the name of it, how it runs, the steps and the rules. And as I said, that you can really describe these whatever way that you want, but what these are just the simple recipes. So not plugging my pizza again. So in my pizza, it might say step 1, go and get the bread flour. Step 2, add the water. Step 3 adds the yeast. Step 4 adds the sugar, mix it. You kind of get the thing. I'm a bit pizza crazy at the moment. Then we went through the query in the second brain and working with the second brain and the second brain that I gave you last week. So we kind of explored that in a little bit more detail. After that, we built and looked at the skill. And as I said, that skill will be available on the GitHub that you all have access to from last week. And inside that has got that simple skills. So if you load that skills into Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, whatever your LLM and harnesses of choice, and then say to it, build my second brain, you're going to get something similar to this here. After that, what we then done was we talked about the steps to go and process information into that second brain. So we done that via the inbox, which is a special folder where we put everything. So everything that we want to go and get processed. And then we write a skill on top of that, just saying what the recipe is to go and do that processing. And then we just spoke about how we can build that into a day-to-day loop. And then so this is really how I work with it. So for example, if I'm watching a YouTube video today and I really like it, so let's say I'm watching Cole Medium Building Second Brain at Scale, or I'm watching Andre Karpathy, or I'm watching any of the other amazing thought leaders, at the end of it, and a couple of things that I like, so I might just take physical notes. I might look and take their YouTube transcript at the end of it. If they've got some collateral, maybe that they share at the end of the stream, I would take that information and put it into my inbox. I would then use my updater skill to go and process that into the second brain. Then I go and read through it and say, well, what is it actually I'm wanting to get in here? So let's say for the first 20 minutes, they spoke about building and creating pizzas. Well, maybe I don't want that in my second brain. And let's say the AI's picked that up and say, well, maybe that's not what I want in there. So I just delete that bit, get to a stage where I'm happy with that, and then approve it. That's the second brain compounds over time. And then when I go into ask a new question, so for example, how does Cole Medium build a second brain at scale? Or what is Andre Karpathy's best practices for second brains? Then that's where that information comes from. I was just thinking, actually, I could build a pizza second brain and I could sell that as a bonus to this. Let me know in the kind of show notes if you want a pizza second brain. I think that would be something that is pretty cool. So just where we're at in the series. So last week number 1, we looked at why build a second brain. So taking all the information we've got in our digital life and making it work for us. Then what we explored last week was around the idea of Markdown, this simple language that we can use to write our second brain in our files. And this week, what we've now learned as well, that Markdown is also used to write skills.md. Something I forgot to mention about the skills.md, it's a standard that's been adopted by Google, by OpenAI and Claude. So because it's a standard, it's a reusable thing that you can use across those different things. Then we started to speak about handing that over to our LLM and starting to make it work for us. So we built 2 skills today. We built the second brain builder, the second brain updater, and really that was taking that raw information, putting it into the second brains that we built. We looked through different types of second brains, sales, marketing, product, but the one that we built was just for personal knowledge. And just to kind of talk about the business that I work for, we help businesses do this at scale so that you don't need these complex data architectures in the background to make best use of your knowledge for building training software, building learning programs, building a marketing campaign. And next week is going to be just a bit of a wash up. So we're going to build one completely from scale. We're going to write the Markdown and we're going to look about how we actually scale it up over time. Might be a slightly shorter stream. So that's it. I said 45 minutes to an hour. Well, I think we're in at 48 minutes, which is pretty good. So I will just see if there is any final questions. I'll stick about for 10 minutes if there are any come up in the comments. If not, then I'll look forward to seeing you all next week on the 4th session. And if you can't make next session, well, thank you for joining and hope you find it useful. And finally, actually, if you want, and I'll leave it on the screen at the end, but if you want access to all the information, including the skills that we spoke about today, it's all in this GitHub. And as I said, if you were on last week and GitHub's a little bit scary for you, all you have to do is go to this URL, download the zip, and it's got everything that we've covered today. So that's only 2 things that you need to do if you want to go and work with what we have learned. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for attending today, and I'm looking forward to the 4th one. Any feedbacks, comments, or things that we could do better, always looking to improve. And it has been absolutely cracking spending some time with you.